Collision near Hamburg. On the afternoon of February 11, 2025, Intercity Express train 613 left Munich heading north toward Bremen. There were 291 passengers on board, expecting a normal trip through the German countryside. As the train neared the Reller level crossing in Hamburg's Schöneberg district, a semi-truck carrying heavy railway tracks tried to cross. But something went wrong. The truck got stuck on the tracks just as the barriers came down, leaving its trailer right in the train's path. The train driver saw the truck and hit the emergency brakes, but it was too late to stop. The high-speed train crashed into the trailer, causing a massive impact. The front carriages shook violently. Windows shattered and glass flew everywhere. The heavy steel rails from the truck scattered across the scene, making the situation even worse. Inside the train, seats broke loose, luggage was tossed around, and passengers were thrown from their seats, leading to chaos and panic. Sadly, a 55-year-old man sitting in the fourth carriage didn't survive, despite efforts from emergency responders. 26 other passengers were injured, with 6 in serious condition. The truck driver, a 34-year-old Romanian man, managed to jump out just in time and was unharmed. Police took him into custody for questioning. Around 80 emergency workers rushed to the scene, treating the injured and helping other passengers get to safety. Buses were brought in to take unhurt passengers to the nearest station. The railway line between Hamburg Harburg Station and Masten Yard had to be shut down, causing major travel disruptions. By the next morning, one track was reopened after crews cleared the wreckage. Hordorf collision. On the foggy night of January 29, 2011, a regional passenger train called the Harz-Elbe Express left Magdeburg, Germany, heading toward Halberstadt. On board were about 45 to 50 passengers, families, workers, and people heading home after the weekend. At the same time, a freight train carrying calcium carbonate operated by Peine Salzgitter was coming down the same single track line in the opposite direction. It was already 2 hours behind schedule. As the Hex neared Hordorf, where the double track narrows into a single one, thick fog made it nearly impossible to see beyond 300 to 500 feet. Meanwhile, the freight train's driver had missed both a warning signal and a red stop signal. Instead of stopping, the train kept moving at about 42 miles per hour. The Hex, which had started emergency braking, was still going around 41 miles per hour when the two trains met head-on. The crash was devastating. The lighter passenger train derailed and flipped onto its side, with the front section completely crushed. Inside, passengers were thrown violently as metal twisted and glass shattered. The freight train, though badly damaged at the front, kept moving for another 1,600 feet before finally stopping. The aftermath was tragic. 10 people, including the passenger train's driver, lost their lives, and 23 others were badly injured. The thick fog made the rescue efforts even harder. Helicopters couldn't be used, so ambulances had to transport the injured by road. Over 100 emergency workers fought through the wreckage to save as many lives as possible. Investigators found that the freight train's driver had missed the signals, most likely due to human error. At the time, this track didn't have an automatic train protection system that could have stopped the train before the crash. Bad Aibling accident. On the chilly morning of February 9, 2016, 2 Meridian commuter trains started their journeys through Bavaria's scenic Mangfall Valley. One train, a 6-car unit with 333 seats, was heading east from Munich to Rosenheim. The other, a smaller 3-car train with 158 seats, was going west from Rosenheim to Holzkirchen. Since it was the carnival holiday, there were fewer passengers than usual, around 150 people in total. As the trains approached a curved section of track near Bad Aibling, a terrible mistake happened. The dispatcher on duty, distracted by a game on his phone, accidentally let both trains enter the same single-track section at the same time. Realizing his error too late, he tried to send an emergency signal, but in his panic, he entered the wrong code. The warning never went through. Seconds later, the unthinkable happened. The 2 trains collided head-on at a combined speed of over 62 miles per hour. The crash was brutal. Train cars crumpled, metal twisted, and the peaceful valley was filled with the sounds of screeching brakes, shattering glass, and the cries of terrified passengers. People were thrown from their seats, dust and debris filled the air, and parts of the wreckage tumbled beside the canal. The tragedy claimed 12 lives, including both train drivers and a trainee conductor. 85 people were injured, 24 of them critically. The crash site was so remote that rescue efforts were difficult, requiring more than 700 emergency workers and multiple helicopters to reach the injured and transport them to hospitals. Investigators later confirmed that the crash happened because the dispatcher had been playing a game on his phone instead of paying attention to his job. He was arrested and later convicted of involuntary manslaughter, receiving a prison sentence. Aichach collision. On the night of May 7, 2018, a regional passenger train left Augsburg, Germany, heading toward Ingolstadt. There were 14 passengers on board, most of them heading home after a long day. As the train neared Aichach station, a freight train was already sitting on the track, waiting for permission to move toward Augsburg. Inside the Aichach signal box, a 24-year-old dispatcher who had only been on the job for about a year made a critical mistake. He accidentally sent the passenger train onto the same track where the freight train was waiting. By the time he realized what had happened, it was too late to fix it. Then the passenger train slammed head-on into the stationary freight train. The front of the train crumpled from the impact and several cars derailed. Inside, passengers were thrown from their seats as metal screeched and windows shattered, turning the quiet night into chaos. Sadly, the 37-year-old train driver and a 73-year-old woman lost their lives instantly. 12 others were injured, with 2 in serious condition. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, working desperately to rescue passengers trapped in the wreckage. Investigators later discovered that the dispatcher had failed to lock the track switch, a simple but crucial step that could have prevented the accident. He also didn't double-check the track status before allowing the passenger train to pass. Because of this deadly mistake, he was arrested and, in January 2019, sentenced to 10 months in prison, though the sentence was suspended. Brühl derailment. It was a dark and cold night on February 6, 2000, as Deutsche Bahn's D203 night train traveled through the German countryside, heading to Amsterdam. The train had left Basel, Switzerland hours earlier, carrying 201 passengers. Some were asleep in their compartments, while others gazed out into the winter night, unaware of the disaster ahead. As the train neared Brühl, a small town near Cologne, a critical mistake happened. Due to construction, the train was rerouted onto a sidetrack, but it was going way too fast. 76 miles per hour instead of the 25-mile-per-hour limit. The driver didn't realize the sharp turn was coming and had no time to react. The heavy train shook violently, metal screeched, and within seconds, it derailed. The impact was devastating. Carriages slammed into a nearby platform and a bridge support. Windows shattered, luggage flew everywhere, and twisted metal crumpled like paper. Passengers screamed as the train broke apart. When it was over, 9 people had lost their lives and 149 others were injured. Investigators later found that unclear signals and miscommunication led to the deadly mistake. After the tragedy, Deutsche Bahn tightened safety rules, improved trackside warnings, and upgraded speed control systems to ensure something like this would never happen again. But for those who were on board that night, the memory of Brühl's disaster would never fade. Garmisch-Partenkirchen derailment. On the sunny afternoon of June 3, 2022, a regional double-decker train left Garmisch-Partenkirchen, Germany, heading toward Munich. On board were about 140 passengers, including many children excited for the upcoming Pentecost holidays. But as the train approached a curve near the Buchheim district, something went terribly wrong. Without warning, the train suddenly shook and jumped off the tracks. The second and third carriages tipped over, sliding down an embankment toward the busy Bundesstraße 2 and 23 highways. The accident was devastating. 5 people lost their lives, including a 13-year-old boy from the area, a 51-year-old woman from Wiesbaden, a 7-year-old woman from Munich, and 2 Ukrainian women aged 30 and 39 who fled the war in their homeland. 68 passengers were injured, with 16 in serious condition. What had started as a peaceful afternoon had turned into a scene of chaos and tragedy. Rescue teams arrived quickly, with over 600 emergency workers and 6 helicopters rushing to help. Soldiers who had been on the train provided first aid before paramedics took over. The injured were taken to nearby hospitals, while others were cared for at local facilities. Train services were suspended and nearby roads were closed to allow rescue operations to continue. Investigations later found that damaged concrete sleepers were to blame. These sleepers had weakened over time, making the tracks unstable. Even though officials knew about the problem, scheduled repairs had been delayed, a mistake that led to disaster. After the crash, Deutsche Bahn launched a major inspection and replacement program to fix old sleepers and prevent another tragedy like this from happening again. Ibbenbüren level crossing crash. On the late morning of May 16, 2015, a Westfalenbahn passenger train left Osnabrück, Germany, heading toward Ibbenbüren in North Rhine-Westphalia. There were 43 passengers and 2 crew members on board, expecting a normal ride through the countryside. But as the train neared a level crossing near Ibbenbüren, danger was ahead. A local farmer was driving a tractor with a trailer full of liquid manure. As he tried to cross the tracks, the heavy load caused the tractor to stall, leaving it stuck. The driver couldn't move it in time, and the train, traveling at about 62 miles per hour, crashed straight into it. The impact was massive. The front part of the train was badly damaged, and it derailed, coming to a stop about 660 feet beyond the crossing. Inside, passengers were thrown from their seats and metal twisted and windows shattered. The accident was tragic. The train driver and one passenger lost their lives. 41 others were injured, with 6 in serious condition. Emergency teams arrived quickly, treating the injured and taking them to hospitals. Passengers who were hurt were brought to a local community center for support. The railway line was shut down for a while, and buses replaced train services between Bielefeld and Ibbenbüren. On May 17th, the tracks were reopened, and the damaged train was moved to a depot in Rhein. Investigators later confirmed that the tractor had gotten stuck, leading to the crash. The farmer faced possible charges for negligence. Vilseck level crossing collision. The morning of June 22, 2001 was calm in Vilseck as Regional Express 3560 sped along the tracks at 100 miles per hour. Inside, 22 passengers, a conductor, and the driver had no idea what was coming. Just miles away, a U.S. Army soldier and his 18-year-old passenger approached a railroad crossing as the lights turned red and the barriers lowered. Instead of stopping, he tried to swerve through, but the second barrier dropped in front of him, trapping the truck on the tracks. Panic set in. The passenger jumped out, desperately trying to lift the barrier by hand. A sensor sent a warning, but it didn't matter. Just 560 feet away, the train came around the bend. The driver saw the truck and slammed on the brakes. 4 seconds later, impact. The train, still flying at 95 miles per hour, plowed into the truck, ripping it apart. The soldier was thrown from the cab and killed instantly. The force punctured the fuel tank, setting off an explosion that sent flames tearing through the train's front car. It didn't stop for another 1,000 feet, dragging the wreckage with it. Then the first emergency call went out. Firefighters spotted thick black smoke from miles away. Survivors, bloodied and in shock, stumbled toward the crossing. When crews arrived, they found wreckage, flames, and eerie silence inside the train. It took 40 minutes to put out the fire. The train driver and one passenger didn't survive. Their bodies burned beyond recognition. The truck's passenger was badly injured, along with 22 others. In total, 3 lives were lost. The cause was clear: human error. The soldier's reckless attempt to beat the barriers led to a tragedy. Afterwards, stricter rules were put in place to prevent military vehicles from making the same deadly mistake. Lathen collision. On the morning of September 22, 2006, near Lathen, Germany, a high-speed Transrapid maglev train set off on a test run along the 20-mile Emsland track. On board were 31 people, including company employees and local business guests. The train glided smoothly, hovering above the track using advanced magnetic technology. What the passengers didn't know was that the maintenance vehicle had been out on the track earlier that morning for routine inspections. After finishing its work, it waited for clearance to exit, but no one in the control center responded. Due to a dangerous communication failure, the maintenance vehicle was still on the track when the train was given the all-clear to continue. Then, disaster struck. The maglev train, traveling at 101 miles per hour, rounded a bend and slammed into the parked maintenance vehicle. The impact was brutal. The sleek design of the train caused it to slide underneath the 60-ton vehicle, ripping off its roof and tearing it apart. The wreckage kept going for another 1,000 feet before finally stopping. The scene was horrifying. 23 people lost their lives, and 11 others were badly injured. The elevated track, standing about 16 feet above the ground, made rescue efforts even harder. Firefighters had to use ladders and aerial lifts to reach the twisted remains of the train. Investigators quickly determined that human error was to blame. The control center had failed to check that the track was clear before sending the train forward. After the tragedy, new safety rules were put in place, requiring strict communication checks and fail-safe systems to prevent anything like this from happening again.